Oh, yeah. Where is it? Oh. Yeah, those are all centered in the lens. They're centered in the.
Wow!
Ooh.
Wow! Wow! Whoa! Wow!
Welcome back to Saruwatari Xtreme. It is July 4th, and I am quite ill again. This time not from my daughter, but it would appear that Drew got me sick. Unfortunately, since I don't have the best resistance, this is something you guys may have to get used to. But I will edit out as much of the coughing as I can. So, by the time you guys see this, it will be after the 4th, so I hope all of you and your families had a great 4th of July. Now, getting back to business. Those of you that saw the last video know that I traveled up north to visit Christian, and the plan was to get all of the interviews done. Unfortunately, we ran into some problems, which is technically the story of my life. The first being, as all of you know, I was very late. And the next being, my timing was off because Christian was extremely busy getting ready for the car show. So we didn't have very much time. So we had to make a decision of what to do and how to handle it, because once he looked at all the questions you guys had, he was excited, except for the fact that we just didn't have the time. So what he felt at that time was, because the whole focus right now is for him helping me is to meet the 4,000 hours of watch time. The main benefit would be if I interviewed him, and that's what you got to see. Unfortunately, we're at a time, so we just picked a couple questions that all of you had sent in that I would answer for his channel. I know that's not the greatest saying, and some of you would be disappointed, and I always want to make good with what I say. So what we're going to do now is revisit those questions here in a timely manner, so I can convey that information. At least that way I take care of all of you. But right now today, let's just talk about my original career, not after I ended my career, and we'll talk about that sometime down the road. But that way chronologically everything makes sense. So, Marcus, Staircast, you guys were the main proponents that wanted this. So we'll start there. The only issue was, even when Christian and I were looking at the questions, Marcus, that question is fairly broad. Rich experiences, It leaves a lot open to interpretation for me. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about what pertained to cars in my life, and then we can kind of go from there. And if I don't cover it, then you would want to comment again, and I'll try and cover it in another video down the road. I've always loved cars, but a quick background of where I'm at here. There are no import car dealers. There's no exotic car dealers. There is only a Ford and Chevrolet dealer, and that is true to even today. So back then, when I was trying to get my license, there just wasn't a lot of options. But at that time, I also did not have a lot of money to buy anything very exotic. So when I got my driver's license, I was probably extremely excited. I'm sure all of you are the same. Freedom. Get to go where you want. But I couldn't afford a car, so my parents were nice enough to let me borrow their Suzuki Samurai, which my dad had to tow behind his motorhome. And that was perhaps one of the greatest cars that I've ever been able to drive, even including these cars. The problem with these cars are you have to drive insanely fast to get a thrill. The Samurai is the greatest car because even at 55 miles an hour, you feel like you're going 150, and on top of that, you're always wondering if you're going to roll over and die. It is a feeling you just can't get off of these cars. But in any case, my parents were nice enough to let me borrow that, and they made me a deal. They made me a deal that whatever money I saved up, they'd match, and I can get my first car. But I had been saving forever. You know, on the farm, I started pulling weeds, working on tractors, harvesting, whatever it took. So, and for all of you that want to know about my mechanical expertise, that's how it all started, working on farm equipment. And then it just progressed into cars. So I've been working on these things for every bit of, I don't know, 35 years, plus or minus, maybe 40, depends on how you look at it. But I saved up enough, my parents met me halfway, I appreciate that a ton, and I was able to get my first car, which was a Camaro. I know probably all you JDM import guys are cringing right now, but that was a very cool car for me. I love that car. But when I think I was a senior, my Uncle Howard, who is a brilliant surgeon, was nice enough to make me an offer. He had one of the first Acura NSXs that came into the country. He told me if I got above a 4.0 that I could take it to my winter formal, and just by some luck I was able to do it. From that moment on in my entire life, I realized that one, there was no match to what I'd seen in the NSX, which equated to the import cars. And the second thing is, I knew that somehow, some way, even if I had to sell some of my body parts, I had to have an NSX. So that kind of became my life quest. But moving on from there, so I got accepted to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I wanted to be an ME, that was my thing. And I wasn't really interested in the farm because I grew up on the farm and manual labor, it's pretty miserable. I don't know all of you that are on the farm, I don't know if you love the farm. Whatever the case being, wasn't really my deal. So I went to school and ME was extremely hard for me. It was difficult. I was, barely making the grade, but also it was really boring. Then I started to study what I would actually make when I got out of college versus what I would make coming back to the farm. And there was a huge discrepancy. So I decided at that point, geez, I should just change my major to ag business. So, and accordingly, I would come back to the farm. So I changed my major to ag business, and then I ran into a new problem. When I got there, everything that I was being taught really didn't coincide with what was actually happening on the farm. It was different. And I knew what I knew actually practically worked in the real world. Therefore, I kind of looked at everything. My parents were spending a ton of money to keep me in school, as I'm sure a lot of you probably got help as well, and we're all eternally grateful. But that's a waste of money. I'm just not into wasting money, even today, as you guys know from watching me. So I kind of assessed everything and realized that if I ever wanted to, I could probably go back to school. So why don't I get back here and help my parents take over the farm or run the farm, whatever the case being. So I decided to come back, which actually started opening other opportunities for me because the farm needed some farm equipment. There was some demand in the area for equipment, and leasing farm equipment, I realized, makes very good money. So I decided I will sell my Camaro to invest in tractors. Yes, that is right, tractors. So I started acquiring equipment, leasing equipment. That started generating me quite a bit of money. Plus the fact that I was working on the farm full time even generated more money. So I was looking, of course, at cars. And I wasn't able to get that NSX from the start, but I was able to look at things that would kind of go inside with that path. So the first car I got was a 300ZX twin turbo. It was a great car. My poor dad had to take me up to San Jose. We got the car. I spun the car off the road coming home after we had just got it, but everything worked out fine. Of course, my friend Gary Tyreman fixed it all up for me. Everything was perfect, but I wanted more. As all of you always want more, right? That's what drives us, capitalism. So I love the RX-7, love the way it looked. That would be this RX-7. So I decided I wanted one. So I saved up and got one of those. The problem being, as you all know, that I didn't really like it. I just liked the way it looked. But as far as the ride and everything, me having a bad back, that was a difficult task. So I just kind of enjoyed it, but locally, and I love to modify my cars. That was the other thing, because of all my experience, I wanted to modify, just like everything I saw in all the other magazines, just like you guys. So I started modifying them, and then I realized that a lot of my money was going into parts. And, I'm looking at the farm and all this equipment that's being bought and the benefits of writing off things. I just realized, I said, it just doesn't make any sense. If I just started my own business, then technically I could probably, not give away 50% of my income to the government, and it could be an actual legitimate business. So my poor parents that really want to disown me to this day, my dad is laughing because he's behind the camera right now, they went on vacation. I don't know where they went, Japan, Hawaii, whatever. Bad move leaving Adam on his own. So since I was just running the farm, I had extra time, had all these ideas, and on their dime I went to go see their attorney and their accountant, which of course also that's why they love me so much. So I had these ideas I ran by them to start my own business. And they agreed that it would probably work. You know, they said the same thing. I think the rules keep changing, but I think it's 3 out of 5 years you need to make a profit. But on the other side of that, there have been many court cases being that businesses continue on, just people suck at business. So they advised me. I got my business license, my resale license. I had set up my separate checking account, my fictitious name account. And my parents were all on vacation, had no idea I was doing this, while I was also running the farm, running their leasing company, my own leasing company. And so from there, I started calling performance companies. And it was a long process. A lot of them didn't really want to talk to me because I'm still in the middle of nowhere. But there was one person, Edwin Manguni, still friends with him. He was at HKS. And just the timing was very strange. He said, "Do you know what SEMA is?" I said, "No, I have no idea what SEMA is." He said, "I'll tell you what." He said, "If you're serious about starting a performance business, come out to SEMA, meet with me there, and I'll set you up with an account, a wholesale account, and you could start selling parts." And he said, "It'd be good for your business because you're going to need other products other than HKS." My parents got back, explained them what I'd done. They were not real happy with me. We booked flights. We were on our way to Vegas. This just all happened in just an instant, it seemed like. So met all these companies, had all these wholesale accounts to sell parts, and came home and started my business. My uncle Howard was nice enough to bring his cars here and just have them modified for no real reason, just to support my business. Other members of my family as well were nice, friends. That business started growing for no real reason except people were really nice to me, which I appreciate to everyone. So then I started looking around going, you know, what am I going to do with the 7? And I see these ads in the magazines for Battle of the Imports. So I decided to start modifying it just to kind of mess around and see how it went. But I was like, well, I'm not really into drag racing. But see, the deal was that my dad was more into drag racing. See, my dad raced sand rails forever. And the story changes whether or not you talk to him or my mom. But he gave all that up when either I came along or she told him to stop doing it or whatever the case being. But he had pretty much retired out of that. Sorry. So he was kind of interested in this, but I wasn't really that interested in drag racing. So I was like, well, let's just take it to Laguna Seca. I did some research, and they were having some sort of club event there that we could run on the track. And I had changed it to the RX-7 to a single turbo. I think it was a Greddy TD06 at the time. I don't know. I forgot. There's so many different things. So I went up there and tried road racing, and it was a blast, except the fact that, you know, with all these other cars, I'm always concerned that someone's going to run into me, and that the fact that there are all these rocks being thrown up off other cars and tires, and the car literally had just been blasted by the time I got back and needed to be repainted. And I was, you know, as much as I like that, that's just not for me because I like everything to look as nice as possible. So I went back in my mind and remembered, the ad to Battle of the Imports. Sorry. So next thing I know, we discuss it with my dad. We borrow a friend's trailer, take the RX-7 to Battle of the Imports, and I'm sure we did terrible, but we had a good time. And then we just started modifying the car more and more. Now keep in mind, obviously, A&L Racing wasn't doing enough business to support a race effort, but you must remember that my dad loved racing. So luckily, the sponsorship of Dad was taking care of the race effort for a very long time, which was great because if you're being sponsored by your dad, there's really no pressure for return. You just do what you want, but eventually your conscience is going to catch up with you. Your dad dumping tons and tons of money into this race effort with really no return. Any person in business realizes that is just a bad idea. So, you know, of course, after many, many discussions with my dad, he just said, you know, his opinion was I really enjoy it. I don't mind putting all my money into it. Just keep going. I have this feeling that you have the potential to make it. Of course, I thought he was out of his mind, but because he wanted to keep going, I didn't have a problem with that. It's not like I hated it. It's just, it wasn't my true passion, but I did love cars. So it allowed me to just keep modifying the 7. The problem being the 7 got so modified that it just was ridiculous, and then it was becoming a true race car. So like, I really just don't know if that's for me. But along the way, all of a sudden, then people started getting interested in sponsoring. That kind of changed things, of course, because it relieved the financial pressure off my dad. I was always hanging out with my dad working on the car, which was cool. And if it wasn't on his dime, I was all for it. I don't remember all my sponsors. I've had a lot of sponsors along the way. I'm sure those of you that have followed me all along probably know better than I do. So all I remember is that at some point, it still became an issue where even I was getting just truckloads of spare parts and free parts. Money always becomes an issue in any race effort. I don't care if you're a billionaire, if you're not smart, you'll go broke. That's just the way it is. You need sponsors, otherwise you really just shouldn't be doing it because you're just throwing money in the toilet. So the second probably most influential person that I've met in my entire life is Tomo, who is now the president of Toyo. He's like a second dad to me. He actually guided my career. He actually made me into what I was because that's what he wanted. And I'm still friends with him. Actually, he just texted me, Happy 4th of July today. We're still really good friends. Our families still go out to dinner and stuff, and he's just a great person all around. But he is literally a genius. When I met him, Nito Tires was a few cubicles in the Arco building in downtown LA. That's why I had to go see him. If I remember correctly, like the company made like $60,000 or $70,000, and by the time I retired, it was over $100 million company. I mean, this is like top level stuff. You just don't even, these type of people, you're just happy to be in the same room with. And it's pretty amazing. So he actually helped me, and he started funding the 7, and just tons of stuff happened. I mean, it's so many details and stuff that I don't think unless you guys are going to go racing, you're really interested in hearing about it. But I don't know. A lot of people feel I was fairly successful. There's a few trophies here. My parents have rooms of trophies at their other houses. But I don't know. Does that stuff really matter? I'm retired. So I did quite well. I don't know. You know, it's like anything else. You just work like crazy at it, and you go faster and faster. I don't know. It was like 10s, 9s, and then we went into 8s. Now, the 8s was definitely a lot of work because we're having serious component failures, all sorts of different things. And so I know a lot of you may not know when I'm talking, but when I talk about the rotary god, his name is Abel Ibarra. So if you look him up on the internet, you'll see him. He's a rotary god because he's a man, and he flies. He's had a tube chassis RX-7 Pro car. He's got an RX-8. He's actually still racing, and that's just obviously, as you know, I'm not. But he was monumental in getting the RX-7 into the 8, so I attribute my success to him. So, of course, I had Tomo and Nito paying tons of money, and Abel helping me, and Abel's been all along helped me. He's just a really nice guy. He actually helped me to learn to build rotary engines, which was good and bad. I don't know, because when we started, my dad was just paying different companies to do it. I had a few sponsors along the way, but it was always very difficult because they're always in LA, and that's about 4 hours away from here. It just takes time. So Abel was nice enough to teach me, and I don't know, could I do it today? I don't know, man, it's been a long time. Still do an NSX engine, but maybe. Hopefully I won't have to find out, but we'll see. So that's kind of along the path, the condensed version of everything that happened with the 7 that I can recall. And for those of you that I forgot, I'm sorry. It's just been so long. I can barely remember what I was doing yesterday. Luckily, NK does OE wheels for Honda. Nito wanted to be a Honda OE supplier, and I had friends at Honda, and everybody knew that I loved the NSX. So if we go back in time, because I just forgot, that's why I have to go back real quick. In between all the stuff that was happening and racing the 7, having the Z, I also went through the motorcycle phase. So again, my parents left me and went out of town, probably a bad move. I just decided to just go down and buy a motorcycle. So they literally flipped out when I got home because, as most of you know, I'm an only child. So, you know, only children tend to be overprotected, as I guess would be the best way to characterize it. So they literally flipped. I drove the motorcycle for a while, and finally they just had enough. They basically told me that they just helped me to get an NSX, just get rid of the motorcycle. So I was like, you know what, you don't have to help me. I can buy it on my own. I'll just get rid of the motorcycle because it's creating huge problems, difficulties inside my family, which all of you know, you just don't want to deal with that stuff. So I decided to finance the NSX, which today I don't finance, I just buy if I want it, because of this lesson that I learned that I'll pass on to all of you. So when I had the Z, the RX-7, the NSX, all those car payments, I mean, debt really didn't bother me when I was young, but man, I mean, to make that all work, I would have to not eat, skip meals, or always go eat at my parents' house to try and make all of my budgets work and everything. It wasn't an easy task, but the learning lesson I got out of that is that I really now just don't buy anything unless I can just afford it and pay for it outright, because I don't want to deal with the payments, and also I just hate interest. You're just giving your money away. And I understand sometimes you just got to do it, but if any means you can actually just save your money up and get it, you'll be miles ahead of everybody else, at least in my opinion. So getting back to the NSX. The NSX was in negotiation with Honda. It had all my sponsors involved because it's a huge endeavor. And Honda gave it the green light. So all of a sudden I was sponsored by Honda. I thanked Mazda and everything. You always want to try and leave on a good note. Just the 7 had run its course. And it was either go to Tube Chassis 7, competing against Abel, which is a good friend of mine. I mean, it just wouldn't help the sport in general. Everyone wanted Honda to get involved. Honda just wouldn't get involved with anybody else. So I had to go there. And the reason why Honda got involved is because I had a lot of money behind me. If you guys want big manufacturer sponsors and you want the key to that, you just have to have a ton of money. They don't want to be involved with anybody that doesn't have a lot of money. That's just the way it is. And the second part of that is that you always need to do what you say you're going to do for them. Whatever that is. Whether that be get on a plane and fly to some show you don't even know where it's at, or go to their corporate event, that's the key. You just got to keep them happy. And like I said, all of you that think it's all about winning races, think again. Unless you've made more than I've made in my racing career, which is quite a bit, I can tell you, that just isn't where it's at. They want what they want. So, getting back, of course, to the story. So the NSX came, that contract went through, I had to start building the NSX, and I had a shop start working on it, but I had a bad feeling that something wasn't right. And this is what I can pass on to all of you. A huge mistake on my part. When you have that feeling here that something's wrong that you're working with, or working with somebody, don't ignore that. That is basically the truth. It's your head telling you, but you just don't want to hear it. So long story short, I went with a shop that had good reputation. I thought everything would be fine. 100% my fault. Didn't listen to myself. Complete fiasco. All I'll say is that it involved a lawsuit that I didn't really want to be involved in, but I had no choice because tons of financial sponsorship, you got to answer to the higher ups. So to clear my name, I had to actually get involved in a lawsuit, which delayed the car. The NSX was late, like maybe a year and a half, 2 years. So it just didn't work out, as things typically don't work out. And after looking like a complete idiot and getting involved with this other person, had to start from scratch and rebuild the car. I don't want to really weigh you down with all that, but the main thing is that when you're doing these projects or show cars or anything, definitely you want to go to a reputable shop, and if something doesn't feel right, make sure you're getting progress for what you're paying. You just pay a lot of money and things aren't getting done. They say things are getting done. That's bad news. So the NSX came late. I didn't have enough time to test. Didn't have a choice. Sponsorship need to see the car. The car needed to be at tons of events. That was another problem. But that's just the way it goes. And that was all my responsibility. It just didn't work out. But in the end, my other sponsors wanted to have a closer relationship with Honda. That's what drives all this stuff. So, Denison, the Civic. I'll tell you about the Civic. If any of you think that I actually wanted to go from an NSX to a Civic, then you're out of your mind. The Civic came from a totally different direction. Nito wanted to be closer to Honda. Honda wanted something for their SEMA booth. Adam gets the call. I'm the in-between person. I didn't pay anything for the Civic. The NSX and all the other cars, I was still contributing my own money to run. But the Civic was a totally different deal. Honda wanted that for the SEMA booth. Nito wanted to be closer to Honda, opened the door for a potential OE tire deal. So they paid for all that car. That car was never even mine. So the car was built. The obligation was for SEMA. The car got done for SEMA, but everyone already knew I was going to retire. I had planned to retire 5 years before then. Like I told all of you, racing was never really my deal. I just love these. I love cars. But my sponsors were smart enough to just provide me with other things to keep me involved in racing longer. But it just got to the point where I really didn't want to do it, and I was kind of left with an option by my parents. They were going to sell the farming operation, or I need to come back and manage it. And the farming operation's been going since 1903. So I don't want to talk to you guys about making smart decisions, but I'll just put this example in front of you so you can think about it. So I'm racing, and while I was racing, I think from what extra income I had, I acquired one Ferrari maybe and one Porsche. I retired from racing. Okay? All I'm doing is working on the farm, managing that, running my parents' other businesses, my other businesses. Now I have 3 Lambos, 2 Ferraris, 6 Porsches, a whole stream of other cars. I'll let you do the math. If you want to go racing, bring a lot of this. No matter how many sponsors you have, you bring your own money as well. And in my case, your dad's money. And that's what'll get you successful. If you don't get out in time, you'll be left with nothing. Just look at the other stories. Some of the best racers are broke now. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So if you want to get into racing, be as smart as you can. That's the advice I can give you. So Denison, your question, as far as the Civic, when I retired, Nito took the Civic because they paid for the Civic. Therefore, I have no idea where the Civic is at. All I have is that poster to remind me of it. Now, as we wind things down, the keys to my success really come down to 2 things that I can pass on to you. And whether or not you choose to use them are completely up to you. It doesn't matter to me at all because I'm already quite fine with where I'm at. But in order to try and help all of you, I will tell you that 2 key components have brought me to where I'm at today. One is, if you're able to learn from other people's mistakes and not make the same mistakes, it will save you not only emotionally, but with that entire balance in life. And the second thing is, always try and surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. I always am trying to learn from everyone else. So what I know, all of you keep commenting on, came from other people. Rotary, Abel, NSX, JC, the NSX itself, the car, George Kudo. These people are genius level people. And the reason why it would appear at times that I'm fairly intelligent is because I learn from them. The smarter the people that you surround yourself with, the smarter you will become. That's just the way it works. Now, I also, on a side note, try and learn something every day. And so I will share with you guys what I learned today because it could possibly help you. You remember Kerry from the last video, my good friend, Uncle Kerry from Christian's videos. He is with his family at Legoland, and he texted me telling me that his gout has come back and asked me if I had any ideas of any remedies that would work other than medicines. So I went on the internet and looked it up for him. And I found that gout can be prevented or also minimized by increasing sexual activity. So what I leave you with today that I learned is, I feel like I'm getting gout. On that note, see you guys next time.